Hey friends, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic. What if Naruto, Hinata and pregnant Hanabi have been in a secret polyamorous relationship? Part 2. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. No good options. Life was as good as it could be for the Uzumaki family. Hanabi was overjoyed now that she was a mother. She took Nitsuko everywhere with her, not only because she was the most beautiful thing Hanabi had ever seen, but also because her laugh was the most adorable thing ever. For a newborn, Nitsuko laughed a lot. It wasn't all easy, however. There were still issues with the baby staying up at night and keeping them awake, but usurpingly, 3 parents could handle this better than 2. When Hanabi looked like she needed a break, Hinata would often get up to calm Nitsuko down when she was fussing. Hanabi had done the same for Boruto when he was a newborn. With additional help from Naruto, it made the pressure of a newborn a lot easier. From here they came up with a system for childcare that worked for everyone, because if someone had to go away on a mission, the others were happy to look after the children. Hanabi was still on maternity leave, so responsibility would regularly fall on her to look after the children if Naruto and/or Hinata were called away for missions. She didn't mind, however, because Hanabi loved her daughter and nephew more than anything in the world. Naruto and Hinata would also return the favor by giving her a rest when they got back, and both had promised to look after Nitsuko once Hanabi returned to missions. Although the sisters were happy to help each other with tasks like this, there would be tasks in the future they would need to carry out either on their own or with Naruto. While both children were Naruto's, it was agreed that future punishments for either child would be handled by their parents. Meaning Hinata would handle punishments for Boruto and Hanabi would handle punishments for Nitsuko, but Naruto was to support both mothers and was allowed to punish either child. They knew this would be difficult, however, because Hinata loved Nitsuko as if she was her own and Hanabi felt the same about Boruto. Thankfully, they knew it would be a few years before they had to worry about that. Even Boruto was happy to be a big brother. Or rather a half-brother cousin. The parents were a little worried about how he would react to there being another child in the house, but he already seemed to love Nitsuko like they did. Whenever the two were close together, Boruto would reach out a hand to Nitsuko, which she would take, and both would smile and laugh. This made the parents even happier as it was clear the children were already close friends. There was no denying that despite the oddity of their relationship, they were a big happy family. There was even a family photo in their house to prove it. Naruto stood in the middle with a big grin on his face, as Hinata and Hanabi both kissed him on the cheek. Each child was being held by their respective mother. They had joined hands with each other and had smiles as big as their father. They also hadn't let the stress of having children interrupt their bedroom life. Unfortunately, while life was happy at home, the same couldn't be said for the outside world. Ever since Nitsuko's birth, the stares they received and the whispers they overheard only increased. It didn't sit well with the village that all 3 of them were together and they had no intention of splitting up. Some were even starting to view Naruto as a disgrace, because he'd thrown away his chance to be Hokage, all because he decided to love 2 women. This felt like a punch in the gut to Naruto at times. After everything he had done for both the village and the entire world, many of them hated him again, all because of one decision he made. The family did their best to ignore them, however, because the 3 of them were happy together and that was all that mattered. Hanabi was the one to face the worst backlash. As she wasn't legally married to Naruto like Hinata, most of the village refused to acknowledge her as a legitimate wife. This prejudice extended to her daughter. Hanabi was out one day with Nitsuko in a stroller, as Hinata had asked her to run a few errands. It was well known by this point that Hanabi was the 3rd wheel in the relationship, so she was quickly recognized whenever she left the house. Thankfully, she was able to ignore the stares and whispers because spending time with her daughter took away all her cares. She quickly arrived at the shop and started finding the items Hinata had requested. During this time, she regularly saw people staring at her from the end of an aisle, but they would leave as soon as she turned to look at them. Hanabi wasn't worried, however, because she knew as Naruto's wife, she was safe. No one dared harm her out of fear of retaliation from Naruto. Even if someone was foolish enough to attack Hanabi or Nitsuko, Hanabi would personally make sure they lived to regret it. Hanabi soon finished and made her way to the checkout. The cashier didn't say anything to Hanabi as the items were priced, she only spoke when telling Hanabi the total. Hanabi gave her the money which the cashier made change for. "Thank you," said Hanabi politely, extending her arm for the change. The cashier however ignored Hanabi and put the change on the counter. Hanabi thought this was rude but went to take the change without saying anything. "Now get out of here and take that filthy bastard with you," spat the cashier. Hanabi tensed up at hearing this. She'd overheard some horrid things said about her daughter, but this was the first time someone had said it to her face. Hanabi took a few deep breaths to calm down. More than anything, she wanted to put this cashier through a world of pain, but also didn't want to risk hurting her daughter. She said nothing, collected her change and headed for the door. Before she left, she said, "You wouldn't like me saying that about your child, so I kindly ask you not say that about mine, because if you say that to me again you'll regret it." Hanabi left before anything else could be said. As she walked home, Hanabi was shaking with anger. She was hoping that over time the village would accept the situation and leave them alone, but that didn't seem like it was going to happen anytime soon. Hanabi feared that no matter how much time passed they would continue to view her as a mistress and her daughter as a bastard. Hanabi was pulled from her thoughts after Natsuko started crying. She parked the stroller and went to comfort her daughter. This helped comfort Hanabi as well because it reminded her of what she loved the most and what was most important. On her way home she found herself passing by Yamanaka flowers. She wondered if the sight of some beautiful flowers could help lift her spirits. Maybe Hinata would like some flowers for the kitchen, thought Hanabi entering. The moment she stepped inside, the stares began again. Unfortunately, this was a much smaller shop, making it harder to ignore them. She overheard things like, "I don't know what's worse, that the slew's out in public or that she brought her bastard with her. Because of her, Naruto will never be able to take his rightful place as Hokage. Naruto gave up his chances of being Hokage just to have a second partner. What a disgrace." Thankfully, however, there were still moments where they were reminded they had people who supported them. "Hey, show some damn respect," shouted a woman. Everyone turned to see Ino, who had inherited the shop from her parents. Upon noticing the commotion, she decided to say something. "Naruto saved the entire world. Without him none of us would be here. So what if he has 2 wives, that was his choice. Furthermore, it's none of our business what he does in his personal life," scolded Ino. "Now quit staring or get the hell out of my shop." Everyone did as instructed and went back to browsing. "You okay?" asked Ino, approaching Hanabi. "Yeah, thanks Ino," sighed Hanabi sadly. "Don't worry about it. People need to mind their own business," stated Ino. "And hopefully if they see others stand up for you, they'll learn to leave you alone." Ino then knelt to look at Natsuko. "Besides, how could anyone hate this little angle?" said Ino, caressing her cheek. "She's such a beautiful little girl. You should hear her laugh, it's the cutest thing ever," said Hanabi happily. "Well, maybe I'll get the chance to hear it on one of Inojin's playdates with Boruto," said Ino before standing up. "Anyway, is there anything I can help you with? Did you want to get something special for your house?" "I did, but I think I'm just going to go home," said Hanabi. "It's no problem, I'm happy to help," said Ino. "Yeah, but I don't want to cause you to lose any business," said Hanabi, and she left before Ino could say another word. Before long she returned home. She put the groceries on the counter and then went to stare at the family photo of the 5 of them. They were so happy together, why couldn't the village just be happy for them? "Oh, Hanabi, when did you get back?" asked Hinata, walking into the room. "Just now," sighed Hanabi, still staring at the picture. "Did you get everything I asked for?" asked Hinata, walking over to the counter. "Yeah," answered Hanabi. "Thank you," stated Hinata. "Also, I just put Boruto down for a nap, so it might be a good idea to put Natsuko down as well." "Okay." Hinata started unpacking the bags. "Listen, Naruto should be coming home from his mission tonight and I was hoping to cook him something special. Would you like to help?" "Sure," sighed Hanabi. "Hanabi, is something wrong?" asked Hinata, noticing that her sister wasn't her usual cheerful self. "Yeah, just the usual," answered Hanabi. "What did they say this time?" asked Hinata. Just the usual things. Calling Nitsuko a bastard and accusing me of ruining Naruto's life, answered Hanabi sadly. Hinata went over and hugged her sister. I'm sorry, Hanabi. I should have gone instead, or at least gone with you, said Hinata. Don't worry about it. I can't expect you and Naruto to do everything around here and they say bad things about you as well, stated Hanabi. Yes, but it's only things like, why are you still married to Naruto? And, how are you okay with this? Said Hinata. The worst I've been called since this began is pathetic and a doormat, which let's face it is no worse than some of the things I was called as a child. I guess, but it makes me wonder if I deserve the backlash I get. I know this was something we all decided on and you keep telling me this isn't my fault, but I still feel guilty for causing you and Naruto problems, said Hanabi. Yes, but remember we also said that because this is something we all agreed to, we are all at fault for the public's reaction. So please don't feel guilty. We're all equals in this relationship, so any backlash we face is the fault of all of us, said Hinata. Hanabi stood up and picked up Nitsuko. Unfortunately, the public won't see it this way for one simple reason. You're married to Naruto and I'm not, said Hanabi sadly before taking Nitsuko to have a nap. Hinata felt guilty. More than anything, she and Naruto had wanted Hanabi to feel equal to them in this relationship, but she also knew Hanabi was right. How could Hanabi feel equal to them when she wasn't married to Naruto like Hinata was? A few hours later, Naruto came home. Hinata, Hanabi, I'm home, he called entering. Good evening, Naruto. How was the mission? Asked Hinata. Pretty boring, said Naruto. I'm mostly being asked to provide security for wealthy clients. Not as much work now, due to the conflict ending between nations. Still, they pay a lot of money to have me as security, which is why Sensei is always assigning them to me. Hinata hugged Naruto. You're working hard to support our family and that's all that matters to me. Speaking of family, where's Hanabi? Asked Naruto. Hinata's expression went sad. Naruto, we need to talk, said Hinata, leading him to the living room. They entered to see Hanabi sitting on the couch watching the children play. She looked so sad. Hanabi, I think you should tell Naruto what happened today, Hinata advised. Hanabi told Naruto everything. The incidents at both the supermarket and flower shop and how she expressed why the village will never view her as an equal in their relationship. Naruto held Hanabi close. I'm sorry, Hanabi, I wish I could do more to help you, said Naruto. I know, but what can you do? Asked Hanabi. You can't retaliate against them, that'll only make our situation worse. Still, I wish I could do something to ensure people didn't stare at us like freaks every time we went out in public, said Naruto, remembering instances from his own childhood where he was called a freak in public. Unfortunately, we can't change the public's opinion, said Hinata sadly. Well, what if we moved away? Asked Naruto. Hinata and Hanabi looked at Naruto confused. What do you mean? Asked Hinata. As you said, we can't change the public's opinion. What if we moved somewhere where we were accepted for who we are? Asked Naruto. I guess that could work, said Hanabi. But where would we go? Also, you'll never be able to become Hokage if you move away, said Hinata. I know, but I've been thinking about it, and although being Hokage will always be my dream, I've decided there are things more important to me now. Making sure both you and our children are happy, and I'm not sure I can do that if we stay in the Leaf Village, said Naruto. Also, I think the village has made their choice. They don't want someone in a polygamous marriage to be Hokage. Maybe I should just accept it isn't an option for me anymore. I can live with knowing that I was at least strong enough to be Hokage. But Naruto, it was your dream, stated Hinata. Like I said, there are more important things to me than dreams, said Naruto. Hinata smiled at this. She had initially fallen in love with Naruto due to his determination and desire to follow his dreams no matter what. One could argue this was Naruto giving up on his dream, but Hinata knew this wasn't the case. It wasn't that he had given up, he had just realized there was now something more important to him, and that was to be there for the women he loved. She had a feeling he would apply the same dedication to them, as he had to being Hokage, meaning Naruto hadn't given up on his dream had simply changed. That means everything to me, Naruto, said Hinata, wiping away a tear. Me too, said Hanabi, perking up. Besides, Lady Tsunade wasn't living in the Leaf Village when they decided to make her Hokage. I'm sure there will come a day when the village realizes they need you to lead them, and they'll be begging you to become Hokage. So, what do you think? Should we move? Asked Naruto. Again, where would we go? Asked Hanabi. Honestly, I don't know, said Naruto. After the war, I probably would have been welcome to join any of the hidden villages, but now I'm not so sure. I agree, why would another village would treat us kindly if the leaf doesn't? Asked Hinata. I guess we could just move somewhere else, suggested Hanabi. Maybe we could set up a small security business where we offer our services as ninja. I still think we'd face the same problem. I feel no matter where we go, we'll still be treated poorly because of our relationship, sighed Naruto. I don't know why I brought this up, I already said the same thing to Gaara. What do you mean? Asked Hinata. I don't know if you remember, but shortly after Natsuko was born I went on a mission to the Sand Village. While I was there, I caught up with Gaara. He'd heard about how I was no longer allowed to become Hokage because of how the village felt about our relationship. He'd also heard about how we've been treated since our relationship became public, said Naruto. Gaara then told me if living in the lead village became too hard, we'd always be welcome to come and live in the Sand Village. He even thinks the village might be more accepting of us considering the Sand Village has a fairly tyrannical history. Considering this is the first time you're bringing this up, I'm guessing you didn't agree? Asked Hanabi. I could see where he was coming from, but I don't know if we can be certain they would be accepting, said Naruto. Sure, they've probably had rulers who have done stuff more controversial than being in a polygamous marriage, but I also think they're trying to move past that part of their history, and I feel us living there would only remind them of the village's tyrannical past. I can see what you mean. Even if they were more accepting, they probably wouldn't like what we represent, said Hinata. So, I turned Gaara down because I didn't want to cause him any trouble, said Naruto. Sorry I didn't bring this up sooner. It's okay, we've all had a lot on our minds, sighed Hinata. I guess there really isn't anywhere we could go that would accept us for who we are. I can't think of any other better options. Maybe staying in the Leaf Village is our best option, stated Hanabi. Naruto and Hinata looked at her in shock. Considering Hanabi faced the worst backlash from their relationship, they thought she'd be the one most eager to move away. Think about it, she said. Sure, we could move to another village that would be more accepting of us, but I think they'd still stay clear of us, and we'd be living a life of isolation. I know we'd all be together and that's what's most important, but think about what we'd be leaving behind. Yes, most of the village now looks at us with disgust, but if today has taught me anything, it's that there are still people who love and support us. Ino stood up for me today, and I know our other friends will stand up for us as well. Even Lord Sixth, who has to remain impartial, has done everything he can to support us. If we moved away, we'd live a peaceful life, but it would be a lonely one. While we stay here, we still have friends who will support us no matter what, and our children will hopefully become friends with their children. I don't know about the two of you, but I don't think we should leave that behind. Both Hinata and Naruto thought on this for a bit until Hinata spoke. I agree, staying here ensures we have others who love and support us, and our children deserve the chance to have a normal childhood. Also, you've seen the way father acts around the kids. If we moved away, it would break his heart, laughed Hinata. Yeah, being a grandfather has brought out a side of him I never thought we'd see, laughed Hanabi. So, is that what you both want? To stay in the Leaf Village? Asked Naruto. Yes, because even though we'd probably find more peace living away from the village, I think it's important we stay close to the people who support us, answered Hinata. Hanabi nodded in agreement. Naruto walked forward and hugged them both. Well, if both my wives want to stay, then I guess we're staying, laughed Naruto. Hanabi held Naruto tighter upon hearing this. She loved it when Naruto called her his wife. Even though it wasn't legally true. Naruto, could you call me that again? Asked Hanabi. What? My wife? Asked Naruto. Yes, I'm your wife, said Hanabi, tearing up. Naruto held her tighter upon hearing this, and Hinata went to comfort her as well. They had a feeling Hanabi was thinking about how most of the villagers refused to acknowledge her as Naruto's wife. They all felt this was unfair, because while Hinata was the one legally married to Naruto, Hanabi was also his wife in all the ways that mattered. They just wish they could do something to change this. Later that night, Naruto lay awake between his wives contemplating the situation. He kept wishing there was a way he could legally marry Hanabi the same way he married Hinata. He had a feeling that Hanabi would always feel unequal to him and Hinata if he didn't, and he also felt the villagers would always use this as an excuse to say she wasn't his wife. Naruto looked over at Hanabi, who was sleeping to his left. Despite being the mother of his daughter and sharing his surname, most of the village would never acknowledge her as a legitimate wife, which felt completely unfair. Truth was, Naruto loved Hanabi as much as he loved Hinata, and if he could marry her as well he would. Sadly, Kakashi had informed him it wasn't legally possible. "What's wrong, Naruto?" whispered Hinata, sitting up on Naruto's right. "Nothing. I'm just thinking," whispered Naruto. "About what? You can tell me," whispered Hinata, snuggling up to him. "I just wish I could marry Hanabi as well so people would stop saying she isn't my wife," asked Naruto. "I wish you could too. It hurts me to see her saddened by this," admitted Hinata. "I don't think it would change the public's opinion, but at least no one could say she isn't your wife." "Well, hopefully Hanabi can live with the fact that if I could marry her, I would," sighed Naruto. "I know you would, which is why we love you," stated Hinata. Naruto and Hinata then decided they needed to find a way to make Hanabi a true equal in their relationship, even if it affected them negatively. Naruto and Hinata were currently in the Konoha library researching everything they could regarding the Land of Fire's laws regarding polygamous marriages. Kakashi had also sent a shadow clone to help them, as he wanted to help them in any way he could. His position as Hokage also granted them access to restricted books. They were keeping this from Hanabi, as should they find a way to make her Naruto's wife, they wanted to surprise her. They used excuses like they were running errands or providing security for the village to explain their absence. Thankfully, Hanabi wasn't suspicious. Unfortunately, they'd been at it for over a week, and they still found nothing. They'd found a few laws that could have helped, but unfortunately, they were now void. "I told you, Naruto, this isn't legally possible," sighed the Kakashi clone, closing a book. "You say that, but we've come close a few times. Remember that old law we found where it said that in addition to high-ranking officials being allowed to take a second wife, their legacies could as well? As the son of the fourth Hokage, there was a time I could have taken a second wife," stated Naruto. "Yes, but that law was made void shortly before Tsunade became the fifth Hokage. That being said though, as the son of the third, I think Asuma would have been allowed to take a second wife." "Please don't tell Kurenai I said that," said the Kakashi clone. "We promise we won't," said Hinata, who then looked at the law herself. "Makes me wonder though if this law applies to my family, but I can't think of anywhere in our family history where the head of the Hyuga clan had more than one spouse. That's probably because it would have caused greater tension within the main family. There'd be greater arguments over who deserves to be heir, and something tells me some spouses wouldn't hesitate to kill each other or the children," said the Kakashi clone. "Either way, I think it's a good start, and maybe we'll find a modern law that applies to us," said Naruto. They continued researching for a few more hours before Hinata discovered something in a book detailing the most up-to-date laws regarding marriage in the Land of Fire. "Guys, come over here," she called. Naruto and Kakashi's clone headed over. According to this, while legacies are no longer allowed to take additional spouses, people who hold or have held significant positions of power are still allowed to take on an additional spouse, stated Hinata. This includes the position of the Hokage. This law is still in effect. So, I could take on 2 wives if I wanted to. Interesting, thought the Kakashi clone. "Oh, so you criticize me for taking on a second wife, but now you're considering it?" asked Naruto. "I'm legally allowed to, and you said the reason you did this was because you didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Also, as 6th Hokage, I'm sure I could easily find 2 women wanting to be my wife," said the Kakashi clone. "You could have done that before you became Hokage," joked Naruto, remembering how certain women had acted around Kakashi. "Unfortunately, this still doesn't help us. It clearly states you have to hold or have held a significant position of power," Kakashi's clone clarified. "And since you are now forbidden from becoming Hokage, this isn't a law you'll be able to use. Hinata, is there any way we can use this law to our advantage?" asked Naruto. Hinata scanned the entire section. When she was finished, she looked at him and sadly shook her head. What about the Clan Restoration Act we found in another book? Asked Naruto. During the early days of their research, Naruto had found a law known as the Clan Restoration Act. It detailed that if there was only one surviving male member of a strong bloodline, they were permitted to take more than one wife. The only other Uzumaki that Naruto was aware of was a female named Karen. From what they could tell, aside from his son Boruto, Naruto was the only male Uzumaki left. He was hoping he'd be able to use this law to marry Hanabi as well, but they hadn't been able to find a recent mention of it to see if the law was still in effect. Hinata proceeded to scan both the contents and index of the book to see if there was any mention of the Clan Restoration Act. She found something as she then turned to another section of the book. She soon looked sad before handing the book to Naruto and Kakashi's clone. They scanned the page to see the book say that the Clan Restoration Act had since been discontinued. So that's it then. There's no way for me to marry Hanabi as well, sighed Naruto. Hinata shook her head in sadness. Kakashi's clone had another look through the book to see if Hinata had missed anything. However, he too eventually put the book down and sighed. I'm sorry Naruto, truly I am. It's okay, it's not your fault. We chose to be honest about our relationship, but now I'm wondering if we should have kept quiet until I became Hokage. We probably could have passed of Hanabi's child as Hinata's in the meantime and only told the truth when the time was right, stated Naruto. I don't think that would have worked either, added Hinata. We would have had to keep both Hanabi and I hidden until she had the baby so no one would figured out the truth. I feel people would have connected the dots eventually. The only way we might have gotten away with it is if we said Hanabi had agreed to be a surrogate, but even then, I think people would be suspicious. Still, if we found a way to keep this secret until I became Hokage, I could have married Hanabi without issue and no one could say she isn't my wife, said Naruto. Starting to wonder if the village leaders knew about this and forbade me from becoming Hokage to ensure I couldn't take a second wife. Said Kakashi's clone, growing suspicious. Something wrong, sensei? Asked Naruto. No, it just occurred to me you could be right. The village leaders are probably far more familiar with the Land of Fire's laws than most. I wouldn't be surprised if they knew about this law and decided to forbid you from becoming Hokage to ensure you couldn't use it, said Kakashi's clone. They expressed that having our leader being in a polygamous marriage would make the village look bad, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were willing to take away the one thing that would allow you to marry Hanabi. The clone stood up. I'm going to look into this. It won't change anything, but it will reveal the true reasons why you've been forbidden from becoming Hokage. Thank you, sensei, said Naruto. The clone nodded before exploding in a puff of smoke and transferring its knowledge to the original Kakashi. Naruto slumped down in his chair and Hinata walked over to comfort him by wrapping her arms around his neck. I guess that's it then. There's nothing we can do that'll allow me to marry Hanabi as well, he sighed. If only I was Hokage, I could be happily married to both of you, and now that will never happen. I know Naruto and I'm sorry. We should have planned for this better, sighed Hinata. Still, even if you could legally marry Hanabi, something tells me the village still wouldn't acknowledge it as you married me first. Still, I just wish there was something I could do to make all of us equal, said Naruto. Hinata held Naruto tighter upon hearing this. There is something we can do, she said. There is. What? Asked Naruto. You're not going to like it. The very thought of it makes me want to cry, said Hinata, tearing up. Another week passed and Naruto and Hinata continued on their quest to make Hanabi an equal in their relationship, all the while keeping Hanabi in the dark to keep it a surprise. They kept using the excuse of running errands or security duty to explain their absence throughout the day. Hanabi didn't mind, however, as she was still on maternity leave and loved spending time with the children, especially now that the 1-year-old Boruto had started calling her Auntie. One day she had just finished putting the children down for an afternoon nap when she heard the door open. Hanabi were home, called Naruto. This surprised Hanabi as they weren't expected back till the end of the day. Nevertheless, she went over to greet them. After giving both of them a hug, Naruto and Hinata decided to get down to business. Hanabi, we've got something to tell you, said Naruto. It might be best if we sit down for this, insisted Hinata. After they sat down, Hinata pulled out some papers. What are those? Asked Hanabi. Well, get to them in a second, answered Hinata. Hanabi, as you know, we feel guilty that you aren't treated as an equal part of this relationship by the public, said Naruto. And I told you I don't mind, because I'm just happy I get to be with you, said Hanabi. You say that, but we can see it makes you sad when people call you Naruto's mistress or his slew, said Hinata. And so, we've been looking into ways that you can be seen as an equal in our relationship, said Naruto. That's actually what we've been up to these past few weeks. We wanted to surprise you, which is why we just told you we were out running errands, said Hinata. It took weeks, but we've found a solution, said Naruto. It's not the best solution, but it's the only one we have, said Hinata sadly. It was at this point Hinata put the papers on the table in front of Hanabi. What are these? Asked Hanabi. Divorce papers, said Hinata, tearing up. Hanabi's head shot up. What? We spent ages trying to find a law that would allow you to also be my wife, said Naruto. Unfortunately, any law that would have applied to us has long since been made void, said Hinata. The only way I could possibly take a second wife now would be for me to become Hokage, which, as you know, is no longer possible, said Naruto. Sensei even confirmed that the other village leaders made this decision to ensure I could never legally marry you. Because of this, we knew we only had one option, cried Hinata. We decided if you can't be Naruto's wife, then I won't be either. It breaks my heart to do this, but if it means you'll be considered an equal in this relationship, I'll divorce Naruto. That way neither of us will be his wife, but we'll both be his romantic partner. This decision was very hard for Hinata, but she was willing to do it to make her sister happy. Hanabi picked up the papers and scanned them. Just say the word and Hinata and I will both. Naruto trailed off as Hanabi started tearing up the papers. What are you doing? Asked Hinata, who was now more confused than upset. You guys are not divorcing because of me, stated Hanabi, still tearing up the papers. But don't you want to be an equal partner in this relationship? Asked Naruto. More than anything, but that doesn't mean I want you two to divorce, said Hanabi, tearing the shredded paper into smaller shreds. But I thought it upset you that I was married to Naruto and you weren't, stated Hinata. It does a little, but I don't mind, said Hanabi, who had finished shredding the papers. I'll admit it does upset me a little that the village refuses to acknowledge me as Naruto's wife, but knowing that Naruto does makes me feel better, and that's all that matters. That's why I ask him to repeat it every time he says it, because it means the most coming from him. So, you're okay with the fact that you can't legally become my wife? Asked Naruto. You've already said I could, said Hanabi. What are you talking about? We said there's no way I can legally marry you while I'm married to Hinata, stated Naruto. From what I recall, you said you could marry me if you become Hokage, Hanabi clarified. It may not be possible now, but as I said before, I believe a day will come where the village practically begs you to become Hokage so you can lead and protect them. When that day comes, if you ask me to marry you, I will say yes without a moment's hesitation. Hanabi got up and started taking the shredded paper to the bin. Besides, Hinata deserves to be your wife. She was your first love, and she fell in love with you first. That's the drawback to being the younger sister, but it's one I accept. You say I deserve to be your wife just as much as Hinata, well, I agree. She deserves to be your wife right now, and nothing should prevent her from being your wife. I may have to wait a few more years to also become your wife, but it's a consequence I'm willing to accept. It also gives us another reason to stay in the village, as you'll become Hokage quicker if you stick around, Hanabi ranted before looking angrily at the shredded paper. This is not the solution. She then angrily threw the paper in the bin and slammed the lid. Hinata and Naruto were just glad she didn't wake the children. I didn't think she'd get this mad over this, whispered Naruto to Hinata. Neither did I, whispered Hinata. Hanabi then marched over to them angrily. Get up, she said, pulling Naruto and Hinata to their feet. Where are we going? Asked Naruto. To do the same thing we always do when the children are asleep, said Hanabi, pulling them towards their bedroom. You really want to do this now? Asked a surprised Hinata. Of course, I think we all need to release some tension, answered Hanabi, still dragging them. I have heard doing it while angry can make it more enjoyable, joked Naruto, trying to make light of the situation. Why do you think it called makeup say? Asked Hanabi. After dragging them into the bedroom, Hanabi shut the door behind them. Life continued as normal for the Uzumaki family after that. The only difference was that they avoided the topic of making Hanabi an equal member of their relationship, as it clearly upset her. Hanabi had made it quite clear that as far as she was concerned, she was an equal member of the relationship, and while the village in the Land of Fire didn't acknowledge her as Naruto's wife, she was just happy that the Uzumaki family did. She also held firm in her belief that Naruto would still become Hokage someday, and on that day she would happily become his wife if he wanted her to. Until then, she was happy being a family with her husband, her sister, and their children. She'd also become more vocal about people saying bad stuff about her in public. If she was with her daughter, she would keep her cool, but if she was on her own, she would put others in their place. From here, they were able to grow more happily as a family unit. Despite this, even though Hanabi would have to wait to potentially become Naruto's legal wife, they still felt she deserved a proper wedding. One night, Hanabi was surprised to learn that her father had requested their presence at a formal event and even requested that they wear their nicest kimonos. They also been told this was a dinner for adults only, so they'd asked Kurenai if she could watch the children for the night. Thankfully, she agreed. They did as asked, and Hanabi was currently looking at herself in the mirror. Her hair was done, and she was dressed as nicely as possible. All ready to go? Asked Hinata, coming out of the bathroom. Yes. Do you know what this dinner is about? Asked Hanabi. Father didn't say. He just told me where he wanted us to go and when to be there, answered Hinata. Weird. Father isn't one to keep a secret like that, stated Hanabi. Maybe it's something he had to keep quiet about and didn't want to risk the word spreading, suggested Hinata. I guess, but I have a feeling this is related to the Hyuga clan, so I'm amazed we'd even be allowed to attend something like this, stated Hanabi. Don't forget, Father said that regardless of what name we have, we will always be his daughters. He's probably still going to invite us to clan events to ensure people remember that, stated Hinata. Good point. Still, I wish he'd given us a little more warning about this, said Hanabi, looking at herself in the mirror. I'm not sure if I had enough time to get ready. Hinata walked up to her and put her hands on Hanabi's shoulders. You have nothing to worry about. You look beautiful, stated Hinata. Thank you, big sister, smiled Hanabi. Hinata smiled back, then thought to herself. Don't worry, Hanabi, it'll all be worth it. Something tells me this is going to be the best night of your life. After they had finished getting ready, Hinata and Hanabi set out for the event their father requested they be at. Naruto had been invited as well, but he had been forced to decline, as he had been requested for a mission the morning the invitation had been sent out. Hanabi followed Hinata but then became confused when Hinata took an unexpected turn. Aren't we going to the Hyuga compound? Asked Hanabi, who knew they had just missed the turnoff. No, father told me we were to meet him in a specific location, answered Hinata. Where? Asked Hanabi. You'll see, smiled Hinata, not wanting to ruin the surprise. Unknown to Hanabi, this was all a ruse. There was no event their father had requested their presence at, and Naruto wasn't away on a mission. This is just what they told Hanabi so she wouldn't figure out what they were up to. However, Hanabi started to get suspicious when she recognized their surroundings. Wait, isn't this? Asked Hanabi, who remembered a magical day that had occurred here before. Yes, this is where Naruto and I got married, answered Hinata. What are we doing here? Asked Hanabi. Hinata smiled and said, I thought you would have figured it out by now. Eventually, they arrived at the same wedding venue where Naruto and Hinata had tied the knot. It was done up in a similar fashion to how it was on Naruto and Hinata's wedding day, and there were quite a few people there waiting for them. It was at this point Hanabi started to realize they weren't at a Hyuga social event, because there were many people there she would never expect to see. On one side there were many members of the Hyuga clan, including her own father, and on the other side were all the people who had shown support for them, after the news of Hanabi's relationship with Naruto and Hinata had become public. Boruto and Nitsuko were also there, being held by Sakura and Kurenai respectively. But what was most surprising of all was that Naruto was there, and he was dressed the same way he had been during his wedding to Hinata. Is this a wedding? Asked Hanabi. She wished this could be her wedding, but that wasn't possible. At this point, Naruto approached the sisters. Hanabi, I know you said you're happy to wait to become my legal wife as you still believe I'll become Hokage someday, but Hinata and I have discussed it and we feel that just because I can't legally marry you doesn't mean you can't have a wedding. Stated Naruto. Hanabi couldn't believe what she was hearing. You said you didn't care if the Land of Fire doesn't acknowledge you as Naruto's wife, as long as the Uzumaki family does, stated Hinata. So, we decided to do what we had to make it official in the eyes of both our family and the people who support us, said Naruto. So, you mean, she feared to say the words in case they weren't true. Yes, but as we keep saying, you're an equal to us in this relationship, meaning we'll only do this if you want to, said Naruto. And I want to give you the same moments I gave Hinata. Naruto then got down on one knee. We won't be able to make it official until I become Hokage, but on this day with our friends and family as witnesses, Hanabi will you, Naruto trailed off as Hanabi took his hand. She had tears forming in her eyes, Naruto just hoped they were tears of happiness. Yes, yes I'll marry you, she said. Naruto stood up and hugged her. Are you sure, even though it could be years before we make it official? Asked Naruto. I'm sure. As I said you will become Hokage one day and I'll happily wait for the day we can make it official, answered Hanabi. I've long since accepted that Hinata was your first love before me, but I don't care. All I care about is that you love me too. And I love the idea of becoming your wife, even if it means I'm your second wife. Naruto chucked. How did I manage to end up with the two best women in the Leaf Village? Asked Naruto. By being the best man in the Leaf Village, stated Hinata. At first it seemed like the three of them were going to hug forever. Guys, interjected Kakashi. I hate to interrupt your moment, but we're all here for a reason. Oh right, laughed Naruto. He took Hanabi's hand and led her to the front of the altar, as Hinata went to join the wedding guests. She also took over holding Boruto who was fussing in Sakura's arms. Sorry, there aren't as many guests as there were at my wedding to Hinata, stated Naruto. It's okay. Something tells me these are the only people I want at our wedding, because they're the only people who accept the union between the three of us, said Hanabi smiling at her soon-to-be husband. You didn't have to do this, but I'm so glad you did. After reaching the altar, the ceremony proceeded as normal. They had made sure not to make it an exact copy of Naruto and Hinata's wedding, because they wanted Hanabi to know that this was her special day. Because of this, Naruto had written up a new set of vows for Hanabi. In them, Naruto promised to love Hanabi for as long as he lived and that no matter what she was his wife just as much as Hinata was. Hanabi in return said her own vows, although she hadn't been able to prepare anything, she spoke from the heart and said exactly what she wanted to say. I always feared, I would never get to be loved by you the same way you loved my sister, and yet things have turned out for the best. Not only do I have the best sister in the world for allowing me to share her husband with her, but I also know that I am now loved by the man I love with all my heart. And although one could argue our situation isn't ideal, they also can't argue that this isn't the best situation we could have hoped for between the three of us. I love you Naruto and I always will, so I don't care that I have to share you with my sister, because it means we both get to be loved by the man we love. After they had been declared husband and wife, Naruto presented Hanabi with a ring, identical to the ones worn by him and Hinata. Hanabi held her hand out without hesitation and let him slip it on her finger. The two of them kissed and everyone in attendance applauded. Years passed and the trio continued to live as a happy family. Other villagers continued to judge them, but it calmed down as they grew to accept there was nothing they could do to change the situation. They also knew it would end badly for them if they did anything to harm Naruto's family, so they kept their distance and tried to keep their opinions to themselves. Even after a decade of marriage to his wives, the Leaf Village still refused to change their minds on Naruto becoming Hokage. Especially since they knew that if they ever changed their minds, Naruto would make Hanabi his wife as soon as possible. They just couldn't deal with the idea of their leader being a man with two wives. Some opinions were changing, however. Kakashi was getting older, and they knew he couldn't lead and protect them forever. During this time, Kakashi continued to insist that Naruto was the best choice for the job and refused to retire until they relented. Some of the leaders were starting to have doubts about their decision. Over the years, Naruto continued to be a hardworking defender of the village, and they still hadn't produced another shinobi that surpassed him in strength. Despite the controversy surrounding his home life, it couldn't be argued that he was still most suitable for the job. The leaders were also starting to see there was nothing truly tyrannical about his relationship. He showed nothing but affection for his wives, and he was a loving and devoted father to his children. This led some of the village leaders to wonder if Naruto would show the same dedication to protecting and leading the village, and if they should have given him a chance. Nevertheless, it had to be a majority vote, and there were still a few leaders who stood firm in their belief that it looked bad to be led by a man with 2 wives. As the years passed, however, the opinions went more in their favor. While it still hurt Naruto to be denied his dream, he absolutely loved the life he currently lived. He continued working as a Jonin-level shinobi, which allowed him to support his family. Hinata and Hanabi also continued their work as shinobi, but they had an arrangement with Kakashi that ensured that at least one of them would always be home with the children. Naruto was still required to leave home regularly to go on missions, but his time at home was his own. He spent every second he could with his family, and before long, both he and his wives had started training their children in the ways of the shinobi. Not just to teach them the value of hard work and to make them strong, but to also ensure they could defend themselves against those who wouldn't treat them kindly. Boruto and Natsuko grew to be very close over the years, doing nearly everything together, viewing each other not only as siblings, but best friends. Things wouldn't always be easy for the siblings over the years, however, as many believed Boruto would merely ride on the coattails of his father's success. Things were worse for Natsuko, however, as many still saw her as nothing more than Naruto's illegitimate child. 2 children were running and jumping through the Leaf Village, which had grown into a city. They seemed to be in a hurry, but little did the onlooking villagers know, what they had to do wasn't very important, it was something only children would be concerned with. "Hurry up, Natsuko, or they'll sell out," called Boruto, who had grown into a 12-year-old preteen boy. "I'm running as fast as I can, brother," answered Natsuko, Boruto's 11-year-old half-sister cousin. Boruto was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and dressed in a white shirt covered by a black jacket along with matching pants. Natsuko, on the other hand, was brown-haired, with her mother's white eyes, and wore a yellow, more traditional long-sleeved top and short shorts. Before long, the 2 children found themselves on the roof of the train that ran through the village. "I can't believe this was the last day they were selling this. The limited edition green chili hamburger," exclaimed Boruto gleefully. The 2 had gone to Boruto's favorite restaurant, Thunder Burger, and purchased 2 separate burgers that would be discontinued by the end of the day. "Why were you so eager to get this?" asked Natsuko, who was a little tired from chasing after her brother. "Because it sounds awesome. Are you gonna eat yours?" asked Boruto, who was prepared to swipe the burger from Natsuko's hands. "I wouldn't have bought it if I wasn't," answered Natsuko, taking the burger out of Boruto's reach. The 2 of them took a bite on the burger and instantly twitched at its spiciness. "What's in this stuff?" asked Natsuko as the 2 siblings slurped the soda that had come with the meal. "No idea, but it's delicious," laughed Boruto. "I can see why you were so eager to get it before it sold out," stated Natsuko. "And you were rushing so much, I'm amazed you decided to stop and invite Shikadai." "Why wouldn't I? He's my pal and I didn't want him to miss out. His loss if he chose sleep over this," stated Boruto. "Still, I don't know why he had to look so agitated over such a simple question. That's just how he is. Your mother tells me that his father was just like that when he were younger," stated Natsuko. "His dad doesn't seem much different from him now," laughed Boruto. "And yet I have a feeling that if you weren't around, my mum would be asking Shikadai to keep an eye on me instead." "Well, Auntie knows he's got a good head on his shoulders," added Natsuko. "And his dad is the one who most regularly accompanies him on missions. I think that's because his team's a little split up now. Aunt Sakura mostly works at the hospital now and Uncle Sai has his own duties. They did mention some other former teammate, but I heard he's always away now. Guess Dad just teams up with whoever is available now," stated Boruto. "Yeah, well, just think. It won't be long until we're going on missions with teammates," said Natsuko. "It's starting earlier for you than it is for me," joked Boruto. Both Boruto and Natsuko were due to start at the Ninja Academy the next day. Despite being a year younger, Nitsuko would be attending early at the request of their parents. Because of their close friendship with the Hokage, Kakashi had pulled some strings to push up Nitsuko's start date. All she had had to do was prove that she could keep up with the other students. Her upbringing had allowed this to be a simple task for her. I don't know what's weirder, that old man Kakashi is okay with this or that our parents are so insistent that we attend together, groaned Boruto. If I didn't know any better, they enrolled you early to keep an eye on me. Well, no disrespect, brother, I may be younger but I'm arguably the more responsible one, joked Nitsuko. Hey, you have moments of immaturity too, countered Boruto. Nitsuko turned away and blushed at this. While she was the quieter and more polite sibling, she was prone to the occasional outburst of anger that would leave anyone present horrified. She didn't like it when this happened, but it only happened because of what others said about her and her mother. I don't even know why we need to join the academy, said Boruto. From what my mum has told me, we're probably stronger than our parents were when they graduated. Due the village's negative reaction of their parents' relationship, Naruto, Hinata and Hanabi had made the decision to train their children in the ways of a shinobi from a young age. They had progressed exceptionally, and their parents already felt that both were close to the strength of a chunin. This made attending the academy seem a little pointless to Boruto. Well, I guess it's just a formality everyone must go through, said Nitsuko. Besides, our parents are all ninja, it's only natural they're keen for us to become ninja. I know that, I'm just amazed they're so keen for us to be ninja of this village, sighed Boruto looking to the horizon. Nitsuko knew what he meant. The prejudice the village held against their parents had continued to the children. While Nitsuko had received worse treatment due to her mother not being legally married to their father, Boruto hadn't been spared from prejudice either. Many had called his mother a doormat and pathetic for not divorcing his father for his affair, and weren't afraid to say it to his face when his parents weren't around. You still annoyed that we still live in this village despite the way they treat our family? Asked Nitsuko. A little, but I understand our parents' reasoning for staying, answered Boruto. They didn't really have a better choice. And they've got friends who've always been kind to us, added Nitsuko. Yeah, I guess it would be hard to leave them behind to start over someplace else that would likely be equally cruel to us, stated Boruto. And let's face it, Grandpa would have a mental breakdown if we moved away. He would definitely be sad, laughed Nitsuko. Still, I can't figure out why Dad is so keen to defend a village that clearly hates us, stated Boruto. You still wondering why he's aiming to be Hokage? Asked Nitsuko. A little, aside from the position allowing him to marry your mum, I can't see how it would benefit us, said Boruto. Well, you've seen how strong Dad is, with him leading and defending the village it would be the safest place in the world, argued Nitsuko. This made Boruto a little cross. I'm not sure if this village deserves Dad's protection, he countered. Brother, you've heard the stories our parents told us, I'm not sure how true they are, but they said that in addition to saving the village multiple times, he's also saved the entire world. If that's the case, how can they resent Dad for something as small as having 2 wives? Questioned Boruto. Maybe they just can't understand Dad's ability to love 2 women, stated Nitsuko. That doesn't excuse the way they treat us. Especially you and your mum, said Boruto. I know, but my mum says us being a big happy family is all that matters, and I think we're just that, argued Nitsuko. Our parents have shown us nothing but love and have done everything they can to prepare us for the difficulties of life. I guess you got a point, sighed Boruto. Still, even ignoring the fact that Dad saved the entire world, old man Kakashi has shown us nothing but support, you'd think that would be enough to get everyone to back off. They just use the excuse of him having a soft spot for his former student. Dad said the Hokage is a leader, not a tyrant, which likely means that even if the Hokage supports something, doesn't mean everyone has to, stated Nitsuko. Yeah, well, I just wish everyone would back off and mind their own business, said Boruto. I do too, but Dad said the hate should calm down once we become successful ninjas. He said the same happened for him when he was younger, argued Nitsuko. As I said before, I'm not sure the village deserves Dad's protection, meaning I don't think it deserves ours either, spat Boruto. You just can't comprehend why Dad wants to be Hokage, can you? asked Nitsuko. No, I really can't, answered Boruto. Why don't you ask him? Asked Nitsuko. I did and I still don't understand why, said Boruto. A few years ago, a younger Boruto had found himself unable to sleep and was currently in the living room watching television quietly. Today hadn't been a good day. He had been out with his mother earlier and a couple of older kids had attempted to antagonize him by calling him one of the harem spawn, and saying his mother was a pathetic woman. Boruto hated when others insulted his family, and so he attempted to attack them out of anger. Boruto was already a skilled fighter, so even though they were all bigger than him, Boruto would have likely been the victor had he been allowed to fight. As his mother was present, she overheard the commotion and stopped Boruto before he could do anything. This just caused more torment from the other kids as they saw this as another example of Hinata being unable to stand up for herself. Thankfully the other kids' parents were nearby and told them to get away from the harem spawn and his doormat of a mother. This made Boruto want to attack them again, but Hinata held him in place. While they were walking home, Boruto asked his mother why she didn't let him stand up for their family. Hinata's response was, because it will only make our situation worse. She didn't punish Boruto however, because she understood the anger he felt. Truth was she was angry as well. Nevertheless, she pleaded with Boruto to not cause further trouble for them and to just ignore others when they said horrible things about their family. Unfortunately, this put Boruto in a bad mood for the rest of the afternoon. Even when his father came home and was greeted happily by the rest of the family, Boruto's mood stayed the same. Naruto of course asked what was wrong, but Boruto refused to answer. Hinata later told Naruto in private, and Naruto completely understood his son's anger. Naruto also hated what the village said about his wives and their children. There were days where Naruto wished he could attack them and force them to treat his family with respect. He didn't however, as Kakashi had advised him that retaliation would only create more problems. So no matter how much he wanted to, Naruto never responded with violence. He had advised his wives to do the same, which is why Hinata had stopped Boruto from attacking the kids. Naruto was hoping to talk to Boruto about this, unfortunately the kids had already gone to bed before Hinata could tell him what happened. Naruto didn't have a mission the next day so was aiming to speak to Boruto first thing in the morning. Thankfully, their time to talk would come sooner. Naruto had gotten up to use the bathroom when he noticed the TV on in the living room. He walked over to see Boruto watching a rerun of an interview Kakashi had done earlier that day. In that interview Kakashi was explaining various ways they were attempting to increase security within the village. Boruto, what are you doing up? Asked Naruto. You know your mum will freak out if she sees you up past your bedtime. Boruto just sighed. Naruto sat down next to him. Couldn't sleep. Boruto nodded. Because of what happened today. Boruto looked at his father surprised. Your mum told me earlier, said Naruto. Then you'll also know she shouldn't have stopped me, argued Boruto. No, she did the right thing by stopping you, said Naruto. While I do think it's good to stand up for what you believe in, retaliating in this case would have only caused them to hate us more, which would have caused us more problems. Do you truly want that for us? I guess not, sighed Boruto before turning back to the TV. Dad, yeah, why do you want to be Hokage? Asked Boruto. Naruto looked at the TV and could understand why Boruto asked that question. Because it's the biggest honor a Leaf Shinobi can have. Being Hokage means you're not only responsible for defending the Leaf Village, but also leading it, answered Naruto. Why would you want to lead a village that hates you? Asked Boruto. Naruto chuckled at that question. You know I'm amazed no one's asked me that question before. Boruto looked at Naruto confused. Remember how I told you I'm the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox? Asked Naruto. Boruto nodded. Well, let's just say it led to me having a pretty rough childhood, laughed Naruto. Naruto then went into detail about how by being the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox he had been rejected and shunned by most of the village for much of his childhood. This also meant he had no friends because although the children of the village didn't know the truth, they had been advised by their parents to stay away from him. And to answer your previous question, it became my dream to become Hokage, because not only did I want to be the strongest shinobi ever, I also wanted respect and acceptance from the village, and I knew the Hokage was someone everyone respected, answered Naruto. There was actually a time when I was well on my way to becoming Hokage. After you saved the world? Asked Boruto. Yup. After everything I had done during the war, there wasn't a person alive who could say I wasn't suited for the job, said Naruto. And you threw it all away after you fell in love with 2 women? Asked Boruto bluntly. Naruto laughed. Yeah, I guess I did. Why do you find that funny? Asked Boruto. Because honestly, I have no regrets, answered Naruto. Why not? Asked Boruto. Do you remember the story of how I fell in love with both your mum and auntie? Asked Naruto. I remember you saying you didn't get much say in the matter at first and that after mum invited auntie to join your relationship it just happened, stated Boruto. That pretty much sums it up. I'm still amazed your mum was more okay with it than I was. To say she was obsessed with me growing up is an understatement, so I'm amazed she'd want to share me with anyone, especially her own sister, laughed Naruto. But making her sister happy has always been important to your mother, so she didn't see anything wrong with it. Though I knew if anyone else suggested sharing me, your mother and auntie would both raise hell. What does this have to do with you having no regrets? Asked Boruto. We knew if the truth came out, people might not react well, so we actually kept it a secret at first. However, after your aunt became pregnant with Natsuko, we knew we had to tell the truth. As predicted, most people reacted negatively. We faced many hardships after that and we still do, but we've powered through it because at the end of the day we love each other and that's all that matters, said Naruto. It was shortly before Natsuko was born that I received the news that I could no longer become Hokage. I was devastated, of course, but I accepted it for one simple reason. What was that? Asked Boruto. There are things more important to me now than being Hokage, answered Naruto, putting a hand on Boruto's shoulder. You, Natsuko, your mum, your aunt, you all mean more to me than becoming Hokage. While it will always be my dream, I can accept it not becoming a reality, as long as I have all of you. Then why are you still working so hard for it? Asked Boruto. Like I said, it's still my dream, and despite what they think of us, most of the village is still filled with good people and I want to do everything I can to defend and lead them, answered Naruto. Also, becoming Hokage will allow me to legally marry your aunt. I don't know if they deserve defending, spat Boruto. I know it can seem that way at times, but everyone deserves the best protection possible, which is something I can give, stated Naruto. Also, when the day comes that I become Hokage, it'll be the day where most of the village accepts us for who we are, which means things should hopefully become easier for us by then. How are you still so certain you're going to be allowed to become Hokage? Asked Boruto. Honestly, I think your aunt's more certain about it than me now, laughed Naruto. Your mum and I nearly divorced to make her an equal part of our relationship, but she shut that down instantly, as she knows there'll be a day I can take a second wife. Guess it's something all 3 of you want now, groaned Boruto. Yeah, I guess it is, laughed Naruto. Why all the Hokage questions anyway? Thinking of becoming Hokage yourself one day? No, said Boruto, shaking his head. No offense, Dad, but like I said, I don't think the village deserves protection from us, so why would I want to take the position as their leader? Also, I've seen old man Kakashi work and all he does is sit in an office and do paperwork all day. I don't think that's something I'd enjoy. I can understand that, laughed Naruto. Sorry to disappoint you, sighed Boruto. You haven't disappointed me, said Naruto comfortably. Just because I aim to be Hokage doesn't mean you have to. You can be any type of ninja you want, whether it be Hokage, Anbu, Jonin leader, or an academy instructor. The choice is yours. The question isn't asking what I want you to do, it's asking what you want to do. What type of shinobi do you want to be? For the first time in this conversation, Boruto was at a loss for words. I don't know, he answered. That's okay, you have all the time in the world to figure it out, stated Naruto. Just promise me you'll try to stop this mentality of, the village doesn't deserve defending. Everyone deserves defending and we need to be bigger people by providing it even if they don't treat us well. Alright, I promise, but it's not going to be easy for me to forgive them, stated Boruto. Nothing worthwhile is easy, son. I learned that lesson at a very young age and I hope one day you will too, said Naruto happily. Honestly, I still haven't forgiven them. How can I? Even after all this time, they still treat us terribly, said Boruto. Well, hopefully things will get better for us while we train at the academy, suggested Natsuko. Right, the academy, where we'll learn how to become defenders for the people who hate us just because our parents practice polygamy, said Boruto standing up and looking at the Hokage monument. I'll do as Dad said and be the bigger person, but I'll be doing it for one key reason, stated Boruto. What's that? Asked Natsuko. To prove that I'm better than all of you, declared Boruto. Hey, what are you kids doing? Don't you know that's dangerous? Yelled a voice from down below. Sorry, mister, called Boruto. The two of them jumped off the train onto a nearby power line. Natsuko looked down at the street below. Brother, asked Boruto looking down in the same direction as her. They could see a group of 6 boys picking on another boy with black hair and glasses. They pushed the boy into an alley between 2 buildings. Should we help him? Asked Natsuko. Would be uncool if we didn't, answered Boruto. You really are choosing to be the bigger person, smirked Natsuko. Not necessarily, stated Boruto. We don't know this kid, so who knows, he might be cool. They both jumped down to the alley and each landed on a roof on either side of the alley. During this time, they saw the bully steal the kid's wallet. Boruto then observed that the leader of the bullies was about to attack the boy, and so Boruto spilled the remainder of his drink on the bully's head. Ops, my hand slipped, he laughed. Are you crazy? Asked the leader. Do you wanna get hurt? Give the kid back his wallet and there'll be no trouble, warned Boruto. Oh yeah, why don't you come down and make us? Threatened one of the bullies. Boruto and Natsuko grinned and jumped down to the street below. They took a stance and got ready to fight when one of the bullies spoke. Hey, I know you too. You're the harem kids. While Boruto and Natsuko had yet to establish themselves as ninjas, their father's polygamous relationship was well known throughout the village, leading Boruto and Natsuko to be recognized regularly. If you know who we are, it might not be wise to take us on in a fight, warned Boruto. Why should we be afraid of some brat and a bastard? Taunted one of the bullies. Those words made Boruto flinch. Please tell me you didn't just say that. He shuddered. Natsuko's eyes were twitching, and she seemed to struggle with her words. What did you call me? She asked, full of anger. What? Everyone knows you're the bastard of the harem, taunted another bully. Veins started to pop up on Natsuko's eyes as she started approaching the bullies. Boruto ran up and grabbed the bullied boy by the arm. We have to get out of here now, urged Boruto. Why? Asked the boy. When Natsuko gets angry, you don't want to be anywhere near her, answered Boruto as he dragged the boy out of the alley, leaving the bullies to face Natsuko's wrath. They ran for a while, until they felt they were far enough away. Hopefully she won't hurt them too badly and she'll catch up with us later, gasped Boruto before turning to the boy. Hey, you okay? No, I'm not, especially considering more of them will come after me tomorrow, replied the boy. Listen, you can't let guys like that push you around. You should teach them a lesson, advised Boruto. I'm not brave or strong like you or your sister, the boy replied. My name's Denki. You're Boruto, right, Naruto's son. And that was your sister Natsuko. Yeah, I think the fact that our father's known for having 2 wives has made us more famous than normal, answered Boruto. Your sister's eyes, that was the Byakugan. I heard her mother was a Hyuga. In fact, aren't both your mothers Hyugas? Asked Denki. Our mothers aren't just Hyugas, they're also sisters, answered Boruto. Wait, doesn't that mean she's? Denki was cut off before he could finish, as this was a question Boruto regularly got. Yes, in addition to being my half-sister, she's also my cousin, answered Boruto. Does it ever feel weird being the children of a polyamorous relationship? Asked Denki. You'd think it would, but growing up in that environment it just feels natural for us, answered Boruto. I guess it would be the norm for you guys, stated Denki. You have different eyes, are you unable to use the Byakugan? So far I can't, but we've been trying to find a way to unlock it, answered Boruto. Since Natsuko inherited her mother's eyes, our grandfather's been helping her master it ever since we started training. On the condition he wasn't as hard on her as he was on our mothers. I'm honestly amazed those words came out of anyone's mouth, because if you met my grandfather, you'd wonder how he could be hard on anyone. Anyway, she wasn't able to use it at first, but she managed to after becoming angry. What happened? Asked Denki. Exactly what happened today. Some jerk called her the harem bastard, and she just went mental. The guy ended up in the hospital for a week, which is why I'm a little worried about those jerks who were picking on you before. Since then, both our mothers and my grandfather have been helping her master the technique. We've also been trying to see if I can use it, but so far we haven't had any luck. Explained Boruto. Does that mean you can't use the gentle fist? Asked Denki. I can, but not to its full potential. Despite this, my grandfather says I'm mastering it well, answered Boruto. Must be nice to have a supportive family, groaned Denki. What do you mean? Asked Boruto. Before Denki had a chance to answer, they heard someone calling them brother. They turned around and saw Natsuko approaching them. Please tell me you didn't put those jerks in the hospital? Asked Boruto, who knew their mothers would be furious with them if she had. No, once one of them recognized the Byakugan they quickly took off, answered Natsuko. I chased them for a while, but I was able to calm down before I hurt any of them. Then I used the Byakugan to track where you'd gone. Well, I'm just glad neither of us are going to get in trouble tonight, sighed Boruto. Anyway, Denki, what were you saying before? Boruto and Natsuko spent the rest of the afternoon speaking with Denki. They discovered that he too was starting at the academy tomorrow, despite not being particularly interested in becoming a ninja. Denki explained that he was being forced to attend the academy by his father, a former shinobi who was now the head of the Kaminarimon Company, which was the biggest enterprise in the land. Denki explained that his father believed that if Denki was to inherit the company, he would have to learn both academics and ninjutsu. Upon learning that Denki didn't want to become a ninja, Boruto only had this to say. Don't become a ninja just because your dad wants you to. But I've never disobeyed my dad before, stated Denki. It's not his business what you do in life, countered Boruto. Our parents don't expect us to follow a specific path. Brother, I don't think we should get involved in another family's business, advised Natsuko. Why not? He should be allowed to choose his own path in life, not the path his father chooses for him, stated Boruto. Well, when you put it that way, Natsuko responded. Boruto turned to Denki and said, who cares about your dad? You should teach him a lesson. Just like how I plan to teach a lesson to the entire village. Actually, we're both aiming to teach the village a lesson, added Natsuko. What do you want to prove? Asked Denki. Basically, that they shouldn't have unfairly judged our family for their decision, answered Boruto. I do feel most of the village has been a little harsh over that. Especially considering it's really none of their business, said Denki. We appreciate you saying that, said Natsuko. What can I say? You seem like pretty normal kids to me, stated Denki. So what if both your mothers are married to your father? Well, as you said, it's none of their business what our parents have decided to do, and the same applies to your father. What you choose to do in life is none of his business, and you need to tell him that. I'll try, sighed Denki. Speaking of my dad, it's getting late, I should start heading home. Then, seeing it was late afternoon, Boruto suddenly looked panicked. Do you know what time it is? Asked Boruto. About 7, answered Denki. Oh no, we better get home, exclaimed Natsuko. Yeah, or our mums will kill us, stated Boruto. What are you guys worried about? Queried Denki. I've heard rumors that your mothers are among the kindest women in the Leaf Village. Whoever told you that is feeding you false information, shuddered Boruto. My mum's very scary when she gets mad. And my mother's even scarier, added Natsuko. Granted, she claims she was always the more outspoken sister. Anyway, don't let anyone pick on you, just teach them a lesson, advised Boruto. Boruto jumped over the railing of a bridge and bolted home. Thanks again for being kind to us, stated Natsuko, turning back. It means a lot to us. She then jumped over the railing and followed her brother. Before long they arrived home. Mum, we're home, they said simultaneously. Where have you two been? You promised you would be home earlier. Asked Hinata coming into view. Sorry Mum, we got a little sidetracked, answered Boruto. Is that so? Natsuko, I thought I told you to keep an eye on him. Asked Hanabi, also coming into view. Sorry Mum, but but you know what brother's like. Once he starts something, it's hard to get him to stop, answered Natsuko. Well, we're just glad the two of you stayed out of trouble, stated Hinata. Anyway, dinner's nearly ready, so how about the two of you wash up and meet us in the kitchen, Hanabi requested. Okay, Mum, they said simultaneously. Hinata and Hanabi smiled. They still found it so cute when their kids spoke in unison. Just as the four of them were about to sit down for dinner, they heard the door open. I'm home, called a male voice. Natsuko jumped from her seat and ran to the door. Dad, she squealed, jumping into his arms. Hey, Natsuko, how's my little girl? Asked Naruto, squeezing his daughter. I'm great, Dad, I'm even better now you're home, said Natsuko happily. Welcome home, honey, said Hinata and Hanabi simultaneously. Naruto gave each of his wives a hug and a kiss. Hey Dad, said Boruto, walking up and fist bumping his dad. Still defending the village even though they don't deserve it. You know it because remember, it's important to be the bigger person, said Naruto, patting his son on the head. I hope you'll be the bigger person as well. Oh, I will. Don't worry, smirked Boruto. Good boy, said Naruto before smelling something nice. Hey, what smells so good? Dinner's ready. We were just about to sit down and eat, answered Hinata. Sounds good. Let me just go wash up and I'll join you, said Naruto. I'm just glad you could be home for this, said Hinata. Are you kidding? Asked Naruto. I wasn't going to miss the dinner before my kids start at the academy. And I might have to leave early tomorrow, but I've also found a way to be at the entrance ceremony. I don't want to miss the moment my kids start at the academy. Before long, all five of them were sat at the table. We're both so proud of the two of you for starting at the academy tomorrow. I'm just glad Lord Sixth was able to get Natsuko in early, stated Hinata. Well, someone has to keep your rowdy boy out of trouble, joked Hanabi. Oh, like your girl never gets in trouble, retorted Hinata. Hey, what do you expect? They are both my kids after all, interjected Naruto, laughing. That they are, and you both remind us so much of your father. Which worries us a little, joked Hinata. You know I got to meet your father at the academy. Mum, you've told us this story a million times, groaned Boruto. Hinata ignored Boruto's statement and continued. He was always causing trouble to the point that people considered him a problem child, added Hinata. Hey, don't tell them that, whined Naruto. I don't want them to think less of me. I'm not going to lie to them, laughed Hinata. Besides, you know I never agreed with them. I always thought you were really cool. You were the only one who did, smiled Naruto happily. You didn't meet Dad till much later, right, Mum? Interjected Natsuko. Well, you gotta remember I'm a few years younger than your dad and auntie, so we didn't attend the academy together, answered Hanabi. But after he started dating your auntie, I too got to see him for the cool person he was. Before I realized it, I had also fallen in love with him. And I'm grateful every day that your dad and auntie allowed me to be a part of their relationship. And we're so happy you became part of the relationship, said Naruto. Ew, Dad, not at the table, groaned Boruto. As Naruto was sitting in the middle of his wives, he put an arm around both. They blushed at this. What can I say? I love these two and I'll never let them forget it. Besides, with how the village reacted to our relationship, I need to ensure I show them as much affection as possible. Yeah, the village, sighed Boruto. Brother? Asked Natsuko. It saddened her to see her brother so angry at the village, but at the same time she was so happy he cared for both her and her mother and hated how they were treated. Boruto, I thought we talked about this. Queried Naruto. I know it may seem like they don't deserve our protection, but I thought you agreed to be the bigger person. Don't worry, Dad, I'll be the bigger person and help protect the village, but only because I want to prove I'm better than them, declared Boruto. Okay, but just remember why we're doing this, to make life better for all of us, stated Naruto. Not gonna be a problem. Once those other kids see how strong I am, they'll realize they should have never said anything bad about our family, said Boruto angrily. Worried by Boruto's tone, Hanabi said the following. Please keep your brother out of trouble. I will, Mum, I promise, said Natsuko. Boruto went to bed that night angry but determined. While he was still angry at the village for how they treated his family, it also fueled his desire to prove them wrong. Natsuko went to bed that night with concern. Not necessarily for her brother, she knew his heart was in the right place and he was only standing up for them during his anger outbursts. What worried her was how the other kids would treat her. Hopefully, once she showed how strong she was, they would start treating her with more respect and realize that her home life was none of their concern. What made her most calm, however, was that her brother would be by her side, along with a few friends whose parents were friends with her own. Meanwhile, Denki was currently having a heated discussion with his father. Denki expressed how he didn't particularly want to become a ninja, but his father insisted that he had to. Denki was told that if he wanted to study what he wanted to, he would first have to prove that he was strong, and the only way he could do that was by training at the Ninja Academy. Denki left his father's office, contemplated both the words of his father and the words Boruto had shared with him earlier about teaching his father a lesson. Before Denki could decide on what he wished to do, he was attacked by an unseeable spiritual force. Thanks for listening. In the next part. In the meantime, please leave a review. I would love to hear your feedback, especially if it helps me improve the overall story.